What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. Whoa, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I had something go really loud in my ear over here on the side. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing, my man? It appears he's a little bit frozen. So, guys, today is the Monday, the day before. Oh, there you go. Now we hear you. Oh, you're freezing up again, my man. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Like I said, it's acted up. I'm gonna leave and try to come back and see if that helps.
All right, sounds like a plan. So, guys, as I was saying before, tomorrow is the second week of training camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and tomorrow is the day that they bring on the pads. But before we get into this upcoming week, let's talk a little bit about last week. Russell Wilson was mainly not playing last week due to I believe it was a calf injury that he sustained while doing some of the conditioning tests. I think it was he was pushing the sled or something to that nature, and he ended up tweaking a calf. He hasn't participated. All indications are that he's going to be playing or participating tomorrow at the first day of practice with pads. Since then, Justin Fields has taken the place of Russell Wilson with the number ones on the first week of training camp, and thus far, news coming out of training camp, it's been more positive than negative. I think there's been a few things that are, he still needs to grow from. But for the most part, I've heard nothing but good praises about Justin Fields this training camp. Shannon, welcome back. Tomorrow is the first day of pads. Everybody's going to look at who's going to be starting. Russell, is he back, or is it going to be Justin Fields? Who do you expect to be the guy under center tomorrow for the ones at the QB position?
I don't know yet. I thought it was nothing serious, but then I heard Tomlin say something about he thought he'd be back at some point this week, so maybe not tomorrow. So I've heard different things that at 36 he don't really need, any of the open air practices, and he would probably come back for the padded practices. So it would be good if he was back tomorrow, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. We've heard a lot about Justin Fields' performance week 1 of training camp. What do you think? How do you think that, no, not necessarily how it was handled. I mean, Russ was out, but do you think maybe perhaps he may have shown something to kind of keep that door open? It seems like Mike Tomlin has, kind of refused to say who's the number one guy, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Depending on who you listen to, some people are saying he looks great, and then other people say he's still struggling to with his progressions and his anticipation. So I think it's just who he is right now. And as we said, he needs more seasoning, an actual competent coaching staff, and somebody that's going to build confidence to learn from Russell Wilson. I'd rather, like I've said before, I'd rather Russell Wilson start the season and let Fields gradually be worked in his specialty packages to give him that opportunity to get his feet under him and finally have lower expectations.
I agree with you. I think that's probably going to be his best bet. I know that there was a lot of talk about, the potential of Justin Fields overtaking Russell Wilson at any particular point this season. I know some of the talking heads of the mainstream media were saying that they thought that, Justin might end up being the starter before week 1. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think that Russell Wilson's going to be given every opportunity to be the number one. And unless he just completely stinks it up, or there's something, a little bit more serious about the calf injury, I think it's going to end up being Russ come week 1. Now, there's been more of a question mark with the offensive line, though. Frazier hasn't been playing with the ones, neither has Fatuanu. What is your opinion on the Pittsburgh Steelers holding back the ones on this shortened preseason? It's not like it was in years past where they had more preseason games. Week 1 is steadily approaching. What is your opinion on the way they're running the offensive line so far?
I'm not excited about it, but to me, it's who Tomlin is. it's how the Steelers do things. They don't hand the rookie the start position. I mean, you got a guy, Nate Herbig, who was a backup to Mason Cole, one of the lowest rated centers last year, that by the end had the yips snapping the ball so bad that you cringed every time they had to do a shotgun snap. So, I mean, if you took the most pro-ready center in the draft, according to most experts, and he can't beat out Nate Herbig, that, you know, and then Dan Moore, who was one of the lower-rated left tackles, and is standing in the way of your number one pick from last year, Broderick Jones, whose future is at left tackle, and you got Troy Fatanu, who's ready to take over at right tackle. I think it's all smoke and mirrors, and it probably will last about another week, and then we'll see the actual true offensive line.
I hope so. I hope by the time the Pittsburgh Steelers end up taking the field for the first preseason game, that the true offensive line is going to be there. You know, I've heard a lot of, I guess, stories that are coming out of training camp thus far is that the offensive line, especially the rookies, are running a lot of laps right now. They're making some mistakes, whether it be the pre-penalty type of mistakes, especially those, whether it's false starts or adjustment failures. But it seems like, I think it was Zach Frazier said he's willing to do anything to stop the running. It sounds like he's running quite a bit. You know, I think that could be a reason why also they have these guys, you know, on the backup side right now. It's a little bit less pressure. You know, you're adding more pressure on them. I think that those kind of pre-penalty mistakes are probably going to show themselves a little bit more. So I think maybe that's probably or one of the reasons why. But I just kind of hope by the time preseason comes that these guys are where they're supposed to be at, because the offensive line, in my opinion, is a position that needs, you know, chemistry. They need to work with each other, and especially for a guy like James Daniels, who's probably going to have two guys on either side of him, brand new, in Fatuanu and Zach Frazier. You know, I would think, you know, to get him accustomed and you know, jarred with these guys, it'd probably be in their best interest to put them there sooner than later. What do you think?
It's almost like NFL level hazing. You know, every year rookies have to go through the gauntlet. Mm-hmm. They got to perform for the veterans. They got to go buy breakfast or lunch for the veterans. They got to carry their bags. This is just another part of the process. It's a rite of passage. And that's all I believe it is. I actually do. Because, you know, you might make people believe that Nate Herbig is a true option and raise his trade value, making teams think, well, hey, you know, this guy's possibly the starter for the Steelers. They could get more out of him. But again, I think it's just part of the whole process.
It definitely could be. It didn't seem like you can say that or finish that sentence with a straight face there, Shannon, but it is what it is. So pads are coming on tomorrow. Who are you most excited to see with the pads? Who do you want? What storyline or what battle are you looking forward to, whether it be backs versus backers or any other matchup that you can think of?
Well, when the pads go on, we know Jaylen Warren's going to shine even more. He's had a really good offseason camp thus far, but when the pads start popping, he shines. And I want to see Payton Wilson. Payton Wilson is, everybody's talking about that he could be the steal of this draft class. Getting him where they got him. Just because of, you know, injury reports and previous history. The guy is a phenomenal athlete, and he's a football lifer. He's very mature. He's ready. He's got the IQ and just incredible speed and athleticism. So I want to see what he looks like with them pads go on, because I've seen him in North Carolina State pop some people, and I'm looking forward to seeing that, because he's making plays now just with his speed, but he can hit.
Yeah, he definitely can. I'm looking forward to that matchup. And you said it first, you know, Jaylen Warren, Payton Wilson. I'm looking forward to that on Back and Backers. That's going to be a good matchup to see. You know, to me, I think that once Payton Wilson finds himself on the field, I think it's going to be hard for the Pittsburgh Steelers to take him off, to be honest with you. Yes. You know, he's got something. He's got everything. He's not afraid to put his face into the pile, and he's got some speed and agility that the Steelers probably haven't had since Ryan Shazier. And that's with a guy without an ACL in Payton Wilson. So, and it's been like that for the last few years. So it's not like he's recovering off of that injury. He's been able to participate without it at this high level. He's definitely or he's been reported that he's the guy that's first on the field, last on the field. I think he was in a interview saying that he's not trying to do anything special or anything like that, be the first guy out there. It's because he has a regimen, pre-workout regimen that he has to do that takes 20 to 30 minutes. So he goes out there to make sure he gets taken care of. But in him taking care of his body and doing the right things, he's leading by example to a certain extent by being that guy out there first and then showing it up and backing it up by being, a high performance athlete out there. So I'm very excited for Payton Wilson. Another player that I've been hearing a lot of things about here recently during this first week of training camp is DeMarvin Leal. I've heard that he's actually played a lot better this year. It sounds like he's doing pretty good. I'm excited to see if that's going to be able to transition into the pads. What would that mean for the Pittsburgh Steelers if DeMarvin Leal can end up being the guy that they thought they were going to get when they drafted him?
No, it'd be huge. I mean, because I've said all along, that's my biggest concern right now in defense is they need another defensive lineman. And because Cam Hayward is older and he's coming back from such a serious injury, that concerns me. Larry Ogunjobi is average. He's he fills a position, but he hasn't really, last year he didn't do anything that impressive. At the beginning of the game, sometimes he seems really quick and he gets quick penetration. And you think, oh man, he's going to have him a big game here. But I think he's just not in shape where he's constantly injured. And I think he runs out of steam by the second half, and then he's getting pushed around. So, yeah, DeMarvin Leal would be just an answer to prayer. The guy is looking really good, but again, the pads haven't been on. So I'm anxious to see, as you say, how he looks these next few days because he's making some good pass rush moves and giving the young linemen some trouble. So I'm really wanting to see, do we keep hearing those reports coming out of camp now that it's going to be more physical?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the defensive line has been, like you mentioned, a question mark as far as the depth goes and potentially even the future. Outside of Keanu Benton, Larry Ogunjobi's always kind of been injured. I think this is the healthiest he's been. He's been participating in training camp thus far. So this is the healthiest he's been as a Steeler. Cam, he's getting up there in age. And so there's got to be something that's going to be, more than just, Keanu Benton for the future and a couple of other guys. And so if DeMarvin Leal can be that guy and move up, that would be great. That would be another piece to the puzzle to add on to this defensive line and continue it. I mean, the other good thing about it too is it kind of shows the development that the Steelers coaching staff has. I mean, DeMarvin Leal was pretty rough coming in. Granted, maybe perhaps he was drafted into the wrong, scheme, so to speak. Maybe he was better off in another type of defense. Yes. But if he can overcome those, things that have caused them problems in the past, and now be a fit for this defense, and that goes as a testament to, not just the coaching staff as their, developmental ability, but also their scouting ability as well. Because, a lot of people were passing up on him, DeMarvin Leal. That is, I mean, he was a third rounder, I believe.
Yes.
Going into that year, he was projected to be in the first round in his last year in college. So he fell pretty far, and maybe perhaps Steelers can get the best out of him.
I know that they call him Marv, which I like. That's Marv. Yeah. When they say Marv, I know who they're talking about. But if you have Benton, who looks like he could be the next in a long line of top level talent on the defensive line for the Steelers, if Leal could step up and maybe Logan Lee develop into something, that you would have the makings of the next generation. We've seen it in the past with the young Aaron Smith, the young Brett Kiesel, these guys before, Casey Hampton took a while to get him on the field. But that's what I'm saying. The Steelers have had a history, Coach Dunbar, of developing these guys and getting them out there. So I'm hoping Leal is just this is the next step in his development.
I agree. And like I said, if he can move up, that would be helpful for this team, especially with a team that has some question marks going into some of the positions in the future, one being the quarterback position. We hope it gets answered, with the guys that they have in the building, but there really isn't anything set in stone long term. Yeah, exactly. Moving on, sticking with the defense, but moving on to another position there, cornerback position. I've heard a lot of good things about Joey Porter Jr. I've heard a lot of good things about Deontay Jackson. Outside of them two guys on the outside, haven't heard much else. Haven't really heard anything about Corey Trice in the first week of training camp, or any of these other guys that I was hoping to hear something out of. We've heard a little bit about Beanie Bishop in the slot position. He seems to be getting, some first team reps. Probably the only rookie to be getting first team reps, the undrafted guy, which is on its own thing. But what are your thoughts about the cornerback position? Is there any concern yet if one of these guys on the outside were to go down for a game or two? I think the Steelers might be in trouble with the cornerback position. What do you think?
Well, I think they're slow playing Corey Trice. He's not wearing the brace. But he hasn't really been participating in the live 7-on-7, 11-on-11. So I figure they're just taking it slow and letting him. He's doing drills, but he's not doing the actual reps. So hopefully we'll see him maybe this week or next week, because if not, it could be a depth issue there. Darius Rush, we're not hearing about any plays he's making, which I was hoping to hear some stuff with him in his first training camp with the Steelers. But Beanie Bishop has exceeded everyone's expectations, but mine. I said all along that the guy is a dog. He's going to compete. He's feisty. He went up against the best receivers in the Big 12. A lot of them are in the NFL now. And he held his own. He was an All-American. The guy is going to play. He's going to get reps. He's going to get snaps this year. And when Cam Sutton comes back, they can use Cam in a lot of different ways. But I think that most of these slot snaps, Beanie's going to earn it. I really do. He's got something that Mike Hilton never had. He's got speed, and he can cover. He can really cover, and we're seeing that. As you said, Deontay Jackson looks like he's, it was really a smart trade if he pans out like he has so far in camp. The guy's matching up with George Pickens, and he's winning his share of those battles. So, but yeah, I'm like you. I think that we need to see Corey Trice start to contribute and look like he can contribute this year. Same thing with Darius Rush. But Beanie Bishop, that was the find. That's an uncut gem right there.
You know it. I mean, if he's the guy that's getting first team reps when there is other guys that are playing the position that have NFL experience behind him, there's really no excuse there. I know maybe perhaps some people would say, well, the reason they're not starting Zach Frazier or Fatuanu is because they have starters there already. Not necessarily true. I mean, Herbig as a center really hasn't done anything to be considered the pole position in any position on the offensive line. He sure is also needs to, prove and earn that position. However, him not being a rookie, I guess, is a step up. But Beanie Bishop, there's other players also playing the slot position for the Pittsburgh Steelers that have had starting slot, experience there. So I think that he's probably showing that he's ready for the role. Maybe perhaps his role isn't something that's as complex as maybe perhaps the center position, where you're kind of in charge of telling the rest of the linemen what to do, and protecting the quarterback at the same time. But we're going to get back into that and much more. We're going to take a quick break. Oh, you know what? Go ahead, Shannon. Then we'll take the break. I thought you were going to say something.
Go ahead and what?
Go ahead. It looked like you're going to. Oh. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we can get back into this conversation. Don't go anywhere. Yes. We'll be back after a few words from our sponsors. And we're back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, stillcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go and check that out. You can get up-to-date, up-to-minute news. Any breaking news usually comes out there. Go check it out. Stay up to date. And while you're there, you can check out our audio-only podcast, including my own, which is called The State of the Steelers. It airs out on Fridays at noon. So make sure you guys go check that out. The last one just aired out this past weekend. It's still up. It's still good. Go check it out. Make sure you give it a listen. So with that being said, getting back into it, tomorrow is padded day. Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. It should be a big day for these two guys. Are you still expecting Najee Harris to be carrying the load, or do you think that's going to be more of an even split, even in practices?
Yeah, I think that Harris will start, but I think it's going to be more of a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
And then, who gets the majority of the, say, fourth quarter will depend on game situations. Like if they're trying to grind out the clock, you might see more Harris, to 3-4 yards in a cloud of dust, but, options there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good problem to have.
In years past, Najee Harris really hadn't participated a lot in the preseason just because he was getting like a heavy load usually into, in the regular season. Do you think that's going to be the same thing this year? He's going to be given that luxury, or do you think he's going to be participating in all of the preseason games and to that nature?
I'm hoping that this is a different type of training camp and preseason where they have a totally new offensive coordinator, a new system, a new blocking, wide zone. Arthur Smith is renowned for his wide zone. They're also implementing some pulling guards. They're saying at camp already, and some trap plays. So they need, as you said earlier, the offensive line needs to play together so they can get familiar with each other and build chemistry. But the running backs need to also get familiar with this new wide zone. Harris is going to have to show that he can be effective in the outside zone. We know Warren can, but does the weight that Harris has lost and everything, does it give him that little bit of extra quickness to get the end and be a little bit more nimble and not always having to try to run over somebody? He's effective at that, but he can break some bigger runs if he can be a little more elusive. So, yeah, I'm thinking we're going to see more starters play each game because of, the new scheme and the new system.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I can see that being the case. There's a lot of new pieces, especially on the offense. And to minimize the growing pains, they're going to have to get accustomed to each other. And what better platform than in a game that doesn't matter, so that way you can get through those growing pains. I mean, I'd rather go through them when the games that don't count versus the ones that do, obviously. But when it comes to preseason and that and the carries that Najee's going to get, I think he's going to actually be given a much more of a heavier dosage this year. I know, like even last year or the year before in training in preseason, it was very rare that they handed him the ball, even when he was in preseason. He was just mainly either a decoy or just kind of blocking back there. I think that's going to be a change this year. I think they're going to be handing him the ball during the preseason, him and Jaylen Warren. I think just for the things that you mentioned, they got to get accustomed to being behind this line, and this line needs to know how to, needs to get accustomed to them and how they run the ball and where to expect them to do their cutbacks and things of that nature. So, yeah, I definitely do expect this to be a more involved preseason. That might be the reason why that they came up with this joint practice with the Buffalo Bills. That way they can, get an idea of watching the younger players and things like that. So that could be a huge clue to this. I'm excited. I think it's going to be huge. As long as the Steelers stay healthy, I'm expecting a huge year from them. But there was a little bit of news since the last time we spoke. Nothing concrete or anything, just a report that the Steelers are interested in one of three different wide receivers. I've heard some things about Calvin Austin doing really, really good in training and in mini camp and OTAs. I really hasn't heard his name too much in training camp. What do you think? Do you think that the Steelers are in the market for another wide receiver? Are one of these three going to be a Steeler before the start of the preseason? What are your thoughts on the news and everything else between that?
Well, I've heard good things about Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Quez Watkins just made a play in a practice. As you said earlier, the preseason is where you want to make your mistakes. It's where you want to make mistakes you can learn from, because preseason is basically glorified joint practices. And the results don't matter. Last year's preseason, the Steelers were perfect. The offense looked like a juggernaut, and it meant nothing. The teams that come out and didn't look good in the preseason, a lot of them had excellent regular seasons when it does matter. So I'm just anxious to see. To me, the only way they're really serious about trying to bring in another receiver is if they feel like they're having issues with George Pickens, which right now I think the people made a mountain out of a molehill about him and Coach Azzini kind of having a disagreement at the first practice. That happens. It's not a big deal because Azzini is an in-your-face coach. Anybody watched him last year on Hard Knocks when he was with the Jets, he was in those guys' faces, and there was some heated exchanges. And that's what we're going to see, because he ain't going to let guys halfway do it stuff. He's going to expect them. I don't know if he makes them run laps like they're making the linemen do, but you know what I mean? You're going to do it again until you get it right, and you're going to show that kind of work ethic. He's going to demand it. So, I'm hearing things that George Pickens has been a good leader to some of the young receivers. They look up to him. And everybody realizes he's the number one horse in the barn. I mean, that's the guy that everybody's looking up to and to carry this offense in the passing game. And the rest of the guys, it's going to be more of a committee. But I think they got some good options there. I don't expect them to bring anybody in, not anybody of note.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised when the reports came out that they were like very confident that at least one of these guys are going to be there. And one of them, I was quite surprised his name was even put up there, which was Tyreek Hill. That was quite surprising to me. And when it comes to Coach, how do you pronounce his name again? The wide receiver. Azzini. Sorry about it. I have to read it or else I got dyslexia. So when I try to think about it, it comes backwards. Azzini. Are you trying to say that he might be the coach that George Pickens needs? He's the type of coach that he needs.
Yeah. Who did I want them to hire? Hines Ward.
That's true.
I want a guy who's no nonsense, in your face. I mean, one of the things that you have to give Todd Haley credit. He got a lot out of Ben because Ben hated him so bad that he went out there and he would make plays just to show, hey, it's like, you can't do it that way. And Ben would go out there and do it and be successful because he hated Haley. And he admitted it. And sometimes you don't have to like your coach. You got to respect him, but you don't always got to like him. But if he can bring that fire and that passion out and take a guy to the next level, I'll take it. And I think he's that kind of coach.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. And you're right. The other wide receivers too that are out there, I think they can be elevated. I mean, Roman Wilson's a guy that I've heard a lot of good things. I saw this one, what do you call it? This catch he had on the sideline over the cornerback, feet in bounds, body control, ability to catch the ball, to go over and it was a contested catch. I think the Steelers might have something in their wide receivers. And when it comes to those other receivers that are being rumored around them, I mean, those guys aren't cheap, whether it's on a year-to-year basis coming from the, how much they're going to cost the Steelers, financially, and how much it's going to cost them to trade as well. Yeah. So, you got to weigh out your pros and cons here. I think that if the Steelers had an answer at the quarterback position and they were for sure certain about it, I think it'd probably be more likely that they'd go out there and get a big name at the wide receiver position like this. With such a question mark, I'm not sure it's the right move.
Yeah, and one thing about it, for years, Kevin Colbert always picked the wide receiver in the draft. He was always trying to, as he saw the prices of these guys get higher and higher, he started trying to bring in the next guy in the pipeline. It's just he missed a lot there the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
But Roman Wilson is the real deal. I will be shocked if he doesn't turn into a reliable starting wide receiver 2 minimum, because he's got it all. He's very similar. I've always said Beanie Bishop, Mike Hilton, Roman Wilson, mentality, very physical, blocking, team first guys, do whatever is asked. Roman Wilson won a national championship, and he did whatever necessary on a team that was heavy run. I remember games him being the fourth, and he had 3 catches. Most guys that are stars don't want to be in that kind of offense because they want to look great in college, so they'll be drafted in the first round. I can't imagine Marvin Harrison or Romeo Duze, one of them guys, getting 3 catches and being happy in the fourth. But Roman Wilson's a different animal. That guy's all baller.
100%. Yeah, I'm excited about him and the other guys. You know who I'm really excited, though, and that I've been hearing a lot of good things when it comes to the passing game? That's Pat Freiermuth. I heard that he got 10 catches or something the other day. I mean, it's something insane. And these throws were over the middle. These weren't, throws that they were going different ways or avoiding the middle. It's going to the middle. You think that's going to stay continual? You think that's going to be constant even with Russ in there? It's kind of not his thing, to throw over the middle. A lot of people say it's because it's vertical challenge. Yeah. But I'm excited for Pat Freiermuth. I think either way, there's going to be some design plays just solely for him. And if you guys are wanting a sleeper or anything like that in fantasy, you might want to pick up Pat Freiermuth.
I last year thought he was going to lead the Steelers in receptions. Mm-hmm. And I was off because I didn't know, I seen how Freiermuth could be so effective in the middle of the field. But as we know, the Steelers just did not throw in the middle of the field until late in the season. Mm-hmm. But I think this offense will be different, and it's going to be predicated on how successful the running game is. But I think that you're going to see even Wilson and Fields, if he has to play, they're going to work that middle and the seams. So when I say middle, I mean inside the numbers, because they can still take it up the seams. And Wilson has said he loves Darnell Washington, because when you're his height, 5'10", and you're looking and you got a 6'7" tight end running down the seam, and he got that huge catch radius, you can throw it high, which you have to get it over. And, Washington should be able to feast down the seams and across the middle. So I think we're going to see Freiermuth have the season this year that I thought he was going to have last year, if he can stay healthy.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, if you got Darnell Washington running up the seams, I don't think there's going to be very many safeties or cornerbacks that are going to want to hit that man. He's like a tackle running out there with some blazing speed. Yeah. So good luck trying to take him down. I think he's definitely going to have a huge role. I know that Hot Rod, he ended up hurting his shoulder. It sounds like he's going to be out for about a week. But what's his name? Pruitt, former tight end of
Nicole Pruitt.
Yeah. There he is. Yeah, former tight end for the Atlanta Falcons. Kind of followed Arthur Smith here. I'm here. He's doing pretty good. He's had some catches as well. So I don't know. I mean, you also have Connor Hayward. Russ, when he talked about Connor Hayward, he talked to him more about utilizing him as a more like that Swiss Army knife, not necessarily categorizing him in the tight end position. Yeah. And so I think that we're probably going to see that Pruitt more in that traditional third tight end spot. And I think we're going to still see Connor, but he's going to be all over the place. Where do you think Connor Hayward's fitment's going to be on this team?
Well, I'll just break it down as the tight end position
Mhm.
that easily goes 5 deep, which is unusual for the Steelers. But you got Freiermuth as your stud, who I think is going to be the number 2 option, receiving option behind Pickens. Then you got Darnell Washington, who is a great blocker and is going to be a threat in the red zone with his height. And, of course, as we said, play action and working the seams. Connor Hayward, I think, he might be the 4th running back, as an H-back, because he's not an inline tight end. But you can use him in so many different ways. But then we got the battle between Rodney Williams and Pruitt. The difference is Rodney Williams is a great special teams player. And the Steelers lost some of those guys. So it sounds like his AC joint injury in his shoulder isn't too bad. And hopefully it doesn't hinder him from making the team. Because I think they need him on special teams. And he's more of the receiving tight end threat if something was to happen to Freiermuth. Because Pruitt is a good blocker. He's got good hands. He's not much of a threat receiving because he's not fast. But he's a professional. And that's somebody that you could always try to stash on the practice squad or something.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I mean, 5 deep at tight end. That's very unusual.
That's very unusual.
I mean, 3 is typically where it is. Sometimes 4 is what they take in when it comes to the 53. And Dennis Povalak asked the question that I was just about to ask with the $2 super chat is, which tight end gets cut? We'll start off with you. If they end up taking 4, who's not making the squad?
If healthy, now if they're both healthy, I say Pruitt gets cut. Only because Rodney Williams is so valuable on special teams. And he's more of that receiving threat. And I think that Pruitt could slide into the practice squad. But, it's mainly the special teams aspect is what's giving Rodney Williams the advantage, in my opinion.
I agree. And I also think that the Steelers like Rodney. He's a guy that I think that, if it wasn't for like Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington and Connor ahead of him, if they had to start it and they had a couple of, maybe not even Pat. If Pat wasn't on the team, I think he would probably be a guy that'd be running for getting some receptions there out of the tight end position because he is pretty good with his hands. He's got some speed. He can get down the field. He's a bigger guy too. So he's not, Darnell Washington in the blocking department, but, I think he can hold his own a little bit. He's shown up in preseason too. He's not been a guy that has stuck out for all the wrong reasons. He's always stuck out for the right ones in preseason and things like that. So, I think that you're right. I think that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to
I root for guys,
teams,
I guess because of we have the other. I'm always rooting for those guys who have to really reinvent themselves to make a roster. I guess where we had the awards I've been involved in, and now we got the Brett Kiesel Award here at Steel Curtain Network. I like to see guys that are willing to do whatever is necessary. Rodney Williams was a wide receiver at college. So he realized his speed and his size, he was going to have to change. So he started working to be a tight end, started getting stronger, working on his blocking. So it's been a little bit of a project. Well, how does a guy who's a project stick around? By being able to perform on special teams. And he's very, very good on special teams. So I naturally root for those guys.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it's a little bit of the underdog, the guy that nobody's looking at, the little man, so to speak, even though he's not a small guy, coming up and defying the odds, so to speak. Pittsburgh Toddy also has a question that I want to hear your thoughts about. It is, will Omar Khan sit on the cap space until final cuts? Or do you see a move happening with the money that the Steelers have?
Well, they can always do a new contract for somebody before the season starts, which the Steelers do that a lot. They usually like to do it before the first preseason game. So that's something to kind of look out for. But Khan can be a little different, and he might wait till right before the season starts. But they can carry that money. they can carry it. What if they end up making a trade, before the trade deadline? See, Khan can do stuff that Colbert was unwilling to do. And, then you want to bring a guy in, but to bring him in, you want to try to give him a new contract. Now, that would go against the norm, right? Well, they fired Matt Kennedy in season last year. That went against the norm. So I think we're seeing a new way the organization is operating. So just because they got that money doesn't mean they got to spend it.
Yeah. And I'll say it like it's been said every year or two. These aren't your grandfather's Steelers. Now, every time it's said, it's for a different reason, whether it's the running game or the defense or the passing game. It's always something being said. And this time it's about the general manager and how things are ran for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and their player personnel. It's not your grandfather's Steelers anymore. So, but thank you for the question there,
Yes.
Pittsburgh Toddy. So, it's happening. We're a couple of weeks closer to the first preseason game. Tomorrow's pads. I'm excited. Hoping for a completely healthy training camp. Obviously, be physical, be out there, be healthy, and I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
As we're dwindling down, do you have any final words for anybody or everybody out there, Shannon?
Yeah, just we're hearing things about guys coming out. Again, there hasn't been any real hitting yet. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing some of these big plays against really no resistance. But when the pads go on and the hitting starts, that separates the men from the boys. So I'm really excited to see, who's going to shine or continue to shine, hopefully, in this situation. And the guys we've been talking about, I believe most of them will. I think these are ballers, and they're going to be even more effective when they can show their physicality. But my key guy to focus on is Corey Trice, because Corey Trice is going to take this position at the depth chart for the quarterback position for the Steelers from a strength. And if he can't come back and be what we think he can be, then it could be an issue. And they might be needing to spend some of that money to bring in another quarterback because they might have a little depth issue there. So I'm really anxious to see what Corey Trice, when and if he gets out there in full contact, looks like.
Yeah, me too. I think that's going to be a huge role, a huge position to be keeping your eye on. Who's going to be coming out of that position to be that solid, backup? I know, like you mentioned earlier, we have Cam Sutton, but Steelers aren't going to be able to get Cam Sutton until the second half of the season. So they're going to need somebody else out there as well. And I'm just excited, man. It's finally here. It's finally here. Football's here. Sooner than later, we'll be able to see preseason games and then the regular season games.
Hey, we got Marky D's wanting to ask us a question.
So Mark asks,
he said, which players do we want to see with back-and-backers?
All right, so you can go first. Who do you want to see with back versus backers?
Well, I've said Warren against anybody, but Warren and Payton Wilson, because Wilson has so many ways to beat you. But Warren, we know how physical he is. So I'm going to say Warren and Patrick Queen.
Well, hold on. I think we read it wrong. He wants to know who you would go with on backs versus backers.
Well,
I think Shannon's a loss for words right now.
I'm confused.
So he's saying, what player would you versus?
Yeah,
if you were in your prime, Shannon, prime, who could you take out of that? Who would you go up against?
Oh gosh, none of them. They're all too good for me.
Oh man, that would be fun. That'd be fun. I'm a crazy guy, so I'll go back in time and take on Greg Lloyd. You probably won't see me anymore. It'll be a story to say, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody. I hope you guys like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you're checking this out on the audio only and you're hearing this on Apple, give us a 5-star rating. Go check us out everywhere else you find podcasts if you're not. Shannon, take us out, my man.